Now, this is going to be a different video than usual. I'm not even doing any music. I'm not doing any intro. I have no idea how long this video is going to be, but you know what? I'm going to let myself make this video long because I want to rant. So if you are watching, thanks for watching. Whenever you do, however you do, any interaction, really appreciate it. And I know there's going to be some controversy with this one for sure. But I'm Mega Amster, by the way. What's up? How you doing? Hope you're doing well, wherever you are. This video, yeah, like I said, it's going to be very disorganized. It's just going to be me ranting off the top of my head, hopefully no longer than half an hour because there's a lot of stuff I want to talk about with this one. This is kind of like a part two to the video I made. I believe it was at the end of 2023, kind of talking about why the overall gaming industry was just like not in a healthy state. Um, from what I remember, I got fine enough comments, so thank you for not being too crappy. From what I remember, maybe I blocked out the bad ones, but this is a part two and kind of a bigger topic that relates to that. And it's really comes down to the major issue with the current gaming industry. And this doesn't apply to everybody for sure. I'm going to try to end the video on a positive note, but not related to those companies that I'm going to talk about later. But this is really concerning big Western publishers, AAA studios that make these big games with profits that are getting more and more budgets are getting more and more, they're taking more and more time to make. And that is the fact that these big AAA Western, especially Western games, just don't they the way the game development pipeline is for those studios, those publishers, it does not foster creativity. It doesn't support creativity because at least over here in the West, where I'm at, I mean, at the end of the day, these are all companies, right? All these publishers, all these studios need to make a profit in order to keep making games. But I don't know about all of you, but the last few years in particular, I mean, I've been definitely paying a close eye on the gaming industry more as a whole, just from different podcasts and videos I watch and listen to. It's the line between it's gotten ridiculous to the point where it doesn't even feel like we're making games anymore. Like what's going on? Because like I said, at the end of the day, it's all about, you need to make profits in order to make games. But it's getting to the point where the gaming industry is becoming like Hollywood. It's becoming like the music industry, where the sole purpose is to make a profit now. What happened to the days where creativity was being introduced and games were being made almost as like an art form, as a creative outlet for players and developers who make the game, right? And I know, like I said, this doesn't apply to every game at all. Far from it. But especially these giant AAA Western publishers and studios, the main platform holders. I'm going to talk about Nintendo later on because they're not fully excluded from this, but they're not quite in the same boat as Sony and Xbox. Those are the big two. But even big publishers like Ubisoft. I know they're not really Western European, I guess, right? A lot of these big companies, these publishers, they are literally just corporations run by the executives at the top who are trying to appease investors, and that's all they care about. Creativity is not on their plate. The developers is another story, right? Most of these developers want to actually put creativity and effort into their games and make them fun experiences that they can work on, and that obviously they want the company to make money so that they can have a job still, but also they want to make an experience that players can enjoy. The executives, they don't care. They're all about money, they're all about profit, they're all about investors. That's all they care about, right? And unfortunately, at least lately, it's really seemed like that discrepancy has really screwed over both developers and players and with these big studios. I do want to shout out this really, really well written article over at Aftermath that was literally written today as of this recording by Nathan Grayson over there. Definitely check this out. But I have a few articles I want to go over. I will say, I wanted to talk about this specifically because of the whole Xbox Studio closures that just were announced recently, and it just had me absolutely livid. And I wanted to get into this on a bigger scale, but I will call out Xbox specifically. This article talks about everything in general. Big video game publishers like Microsoft, because obviously this was the big news at the time, are paving their own path to irrelevance, prioritizing short term profits over long term anything. Because what's happening, as we're seeing with these closures and all these layoffs and stuff, all these big Western, especially Western publishers and studios are only focusing on the safe bets. They're only focusing on the Call of Duties, the live service games and initiative, and they're jumping on trends and stuff too. Call of Duty, I mean, is a big example. GTA, stuff like these safe, almost guaranteed money makers, right? That, yeah, like this article suggesting, are going to help short term for sure, but over long term, you're going to lose creativity. You're going to lose interest from people, and it's honestly going to bite you in the butt. So this week, Microsoft obviously had already announced layoffs of 1,900 game workers earlier this year. Earlier in 2024, they announced a bunch of other layoffs, but now took the site to its own workforce, shoving 4 Bethesda studios in a single swing. Matt Booty, head of, according to an email from Xbox Game Studios head Matt Booty, essentially they're saying they're doubling down on existing franchises. A lot of people, I've seen some comments about potentially, because it's Bethesda specific with these closures, about pivoting to a new Fallout because of the TV show and the success of that. Could be, I don't know, but it's really annoying. So essentially, what happened was the latest round. Yeah, Arcane Austin, who were the developers of Redfall. Obviously, they worked on Prey before, which is beloved. Dishonored as well. Um, they're apparently just gone. Tango. This is the one that really pisses me off, and I'm going to get into this in a sec. Tango GameWorks. They made Hi-Fi Rush last year, which was critically acclaimed. Apparently, I had like 3 million active players with Game Pass and sales combined, which, I mean, granted, I'm not Xbox. From my perspective, seems like a success, and especially if it's a critical success, right? That's something that's hard to achieve in today's day and age with so many games coming out. And it's like such a talented studio gone. They also worked on Ghostwire Tokyo, Evil Within series. Also, they pulled the plug on Roundhouse Studios, which I guess was a sports studio. I guess Roundhouse is getting absorbed into Elder Scrolls Online, from what it sounds like. And Mighty Doom, creator Alpha Dog Studios. I guess Mighty Doom's like a mobile Doom based game, which I didn't even know existed. But it, I mean, both the Arcane Austin and Tango are the big ones there. One of these things studios had in common was original series, right? Because Arcane Austin had Redfall, Prey and Dishonored, and Tango having Hi-Fi Rush, Ghostwire Tokyo, right? Not a Call of Duty, not a GTA, not even like a rare IP or a Gears or any of those for Xbox, right? However, because none of the above games achieve the next big thing status and cause the almighty number to soar, it goes like to the arms of infinity. I love the language being used here. Microsoft decided to cut its losses, which again, in some cases, were actually profits. This mirrors the Activision Blizzard cuts from earlier this year, right? Which saw Microsoft canned Blizzard's long development survival game. Yeah, okay. So, right, essentially, what's going on is like because these games aren't huge successes, they're just smaller games that still do well in their own right. I mean, Redfall, yeah, the PR on that wasn't great, but the studio is clearly very talented from their previous works on Prey and Dishonored. And they're just like they look at these and it's like, oh, it's not exploding. So what are we gonna do here, right? What are we actually gonna do here? Layoffs at some companies like Sony and EA. So here's the thing: Xbox is not the only one at fault for this, right? All these big studios, Sony, I mean, being a Japanese company, but so focused on Western development. I mean, they did it. They've done plenty of the layoffs here. I mean, look at their whole shutdown of the Japanese studios they had. Arguably, some of their most innovative and creative studios shut down completely. That sucks. I mean, they got Astrobot now, I guess, but like now they're fully. It's good to have variety. Variety is a good thing, but these big companies, the variety isn't worth the risk. So they just want to focus on safe bets. And like, sure, in the short term, that's going to get them profits, right? Of course, Call of Duty is going to sell. Of course, Grand Theft Auto is going to sell. Gears is going to sell. Halo's going to sell. God of War, Last of Us are going to sell. Assassin's Creed from Ubisoft is going to sell. EA with all their sports games, those are going to sell. But like, how long are people going to be interested if you keep making the safe bets? Like when Hi-Fi Rush was revealed, if any of you remember at the Xbox Developer Direct, beginning of 2023, like that was crazy. It shadow dropped out of nowhere, and it was this. It looked so unique in the sea of Forza. Not to crap on these franchises, but in the sea of first-person shooter racing games, you know, all these big triple A, and then you had this really interesting looking cell shaded comic book style rhythm action game that was super unique from a studio you wouldn't have expected. And it was great. And it was like such a fresh take on that genre and such a for Microsoft, it was their most interesting game in literal years. Like I really don't care much about Xbox IP to be completely honest, but like Hi-Fi Rush was my game of the year of 2023. It's one of my favorite games of all time. I connected very personally on a level with that game, which is why I'm ridiculously pissed off. I'm going to try not to swear on this, but I can't make any guarantees because I don't want to have any filter for this. I just I cannot believe the fact that it's yeah, double down on our biggest opportunities, including our owned IP, sports, and massive online communities. But even then, owned IP. Here's the crazy part: is that we have a bunch of Star Wars games coming out. We have a bunch of Marvel games coming out. We have, I mean, the Avatar game from Ubisoft previously. There are a bunch of licensed games with other studios, like big stuff, like I mean, Disney being the big one here. And it's like, yeah, it's either existing IP that's going to sell regardless, or it's licenses with other studios that are massively popular. Hogwarts Legacy, for example, right? For Harry Potter. It's like, where is the in between? Where are the smaller games that can sell even more and kind of just like keep things refreshing? Right? It's honestly ridiculous. New IPs, yeah, now close. Oh, this the London Sony studio, of course. And then not too much this was actually pretty recently also, as of this recording. Take Two shutting down several studios, including Roll 7, who yeah, worked on Roller Drone, which I just checked out recently for the first time, Ollie Ollie World, and they just got shut down completely. Um, and then yeah, Epic was shutting down studios, and then yeah, like the Mediatonic with Fall Guys was hit pretty hard with that. But yeah, the layoffs are just they're getting worse and worse over time with these Western AAA studios. Now with Nintendo, for example, they don't have to deal with this as much because there are laws in Japan that literally prevent this kind of stuff, right? Like remember when Iwata had to take a pay cut during the Wii U era when he was CEO of Nintendo? That wasn't despite popular belief, that wasn't because he did it like out of the goodness of his own heart or whatever. Like, I mean, I'm not saying he wasn't a good guy. Like, for sure, he seemed like a decent guy and like he actually understood gamers. But like, he did that because it's the law. Like, you CEOs, that's one of the things that they can do is take a pay cut before laying off employees. So they have these kind of laws to protect people in Japan. The states they don't. It's fair game. That's why we're seeing all these layoffs and going crazy. And these massive corporations like Xbox, like Sony, just getting record breaking profits because they want to appease the shareholders because they're cutting studios and they're cutting people. And it's honestly ridiculous. It's such a big issue. They're avoiding risk. Any like non 10 million seller is just getting the boot. I mean, we even heard about Square Enix. I know they're a Japanese based studio mainly, but like cutting back on some of they're kind of doing some quality control, which I mean, I guess there were some games that weren't as great, but like some of their smaller projects that they had released a lot of in the last couple of years, and they're focusing more on their Final Fantasy, and their Dragon Quest and stuff like that. Yeah, and it's like I don't know. Exo Final Fantasy Diablo list only mild excitement at best from diehards. I don't know if I'd argue Diablo. That seems pretty popular. Assassin's Creed, Far Cry. It's like, and then the live service trend, right? Skull and Bones. Right, Redfall. A big reason why that game failed is because it's tried to capture some of that live service crowd, and I mean the 60 FPS thing was a big deal too. And just trying to follow trends instead of taking risks that would actually make companies stand out. They're going to follow what everybody else is doing and release mediocre products. Recent times, AAA publishers have repeatedly had their lunch eaten, at least in terms of mind share, by more creative and nimble indies. And that's what I'm going to get to at the end of this video, talking about some stuff that makes this sound more interesting. So this article is really good. Slow year for AAA publishers, but that's what happens when you spend years quietly canceling projects that you're worried might not achieve such a spectacular. That's the thing is like that all these big studios, they're canceling all these sorts of projects. Granted, a lot of them, like for example, Sony's End canceling a bunch of the live service stuff. That's probably a good idea. Those games probably wouldn't have been successful. I mean, you never know, but probably not. The Last of Us Factions one might have been, but like that's a big risk. That's like chasing trends in terms of that risk because that's just I don't know. That's a whole other thing. But like that was probably a good idea. But then we hear about all these different projects. What was that like Mandalorian based Star Wars single player game from EA that they dropped, right? Like that actually could have been really cool. I would have been super hyped to see that instead of this. I mean, I'm sure Outlaws is going to be good, but I mean, on the surface level, it seems kind of like a generic open world game. I'll be honest. From what Ubisoft making that. And then there's Indiana Jones, which I was kind of excited for. I mean, to be honest, this Xbox news has really soured me a little bit. Where to a point where I really don't think I'm going to buy that game. Like, why would I buy Xbox games if they're not going to make anything interesting? You know what I mean? And of course, that is a subjective thing, but it's like you can't you can't sit here and look at all the stuff that's been happening and tell me that Western studios are in a good spot. Like, you can't tell me that. I mean, the publishers, like, they're fine, right? They're cutting studios to make more money. And, like, that's why we see, like, record breaking profits with Xbox because they're gutting all these studios that they acquired over the last few years. And honestly, it's fucking ridiculous. So in a few years, when there's a massive gap in the industry from all the games that were never made by the people who got laid off at the studios, who's going to make your games? There's going to be a huge gap. Like last year, 2023, ton of big AAA games coming out. That's probably the most we're going to see in the next decade, I'm betting you. Because st- with budgets getting bigger, with the time it takes to make these games getting crazier, and with all these companies not taking risks and chasing trends that may not even work out for them, risks not worth taking in that case, what are you going to do? You're going to get less stuff, right? There have been opinions I've seen online. I personally have this opinion of like have these big AAA games, but have smaller AA games like Hi-Fi Rush. Like I mean, Helldivers 2 is not a AAA game, right? But that was a smart move on Sony to do that. I don't know about Stellar Blade. That seems unique. I don't know if I'd quite call that AA. That might be more like a AAA game. I haven't played it, so I couldn't say. But let me know in the comments below. But like pacing out your big tentpole releases with games like that, it's like it keeps a constant stream of games coming out and it keeps things refreshing. So what if they don't sell gangbusters? Like the idea is that they sell well enough, like they can't sell poorly, of course, but like they sell well enough and they get people interested and it keeps people refreshed and invested in your ecosystem. Especially for a company like Xbox, who they want people still on Game Pass. And now I don't know. I don't know. So here, okay, here's the. A lot of this is going to be focused on Xbox. I'm going to be honest because I'm really pissed at them. Here is the IGN article that was uploaded yesterday as of this recording. This was the big one. Um, yeah. Once again, Arcane Awesome, Tango Gameworks, blah, blah, Alpha Dog. Microsoft, currently valued at over $3 trillion, did not say how many staff will lose their jobs, but significant layoffs are inevitable. IGN asked Bethesda for comment, and Microsoft declined to expand further, of course. And Redfall was supposed to have a whole DLC thing, an offline mode, new character DLC, and now it's all gone. Luckily, they're going to reimburse. They're going to give players credit somehow. I hope it's credit enough. Like, I hope they just get a refund for however much the DLC was or whatever. But that's honestly kind of crazy. I guess Arcane Leon is fine. The reprioritization of titles and resources means a few teams will be realigned to other sets of. I don't know, man. It's also, this relates to the whole Activision Blizzard thing. Shout out to Did You Know Gaming, Liam Robinson over there. I made a YouTube short about this, but with the whole Donkey Kong 3D game that they were supposedly working on, Vicarious Vision was over there, and then that whole team getting, pretty much converted into what is it, Blizzard Albany? It was one of those. I think it was Blizzard Albany or another one of the Blizzard support teams, and now they just were support on Diablo, support on Call of Duty, all those Activision Blizzard games because that's the only ones that they're going to prioritize now because those are safe bets for Activision Blizzard and well now Xbox. I am so glad Toys for Bob bought their own independence. I am so glad they got out of there because that they would be next on the cutting block. They'd be gone. Maybe not now, but they'd be gone very soon. I guarantee you. I am so glad they were able to get out of there. I'm worried about studios like Ninja Theory, for example. Ninja Theory is going to release Hellblade 2. I don't know if it's going to sell as well as the first one, considering the 30 versus 60 frames controversy. It'll be a unique experience. From what I've heard, those games are great and like cinematic but like when it's such a short game, I don't know. We'll see. I wouldn't be surprised if a year or two from now we hear that Ninja Theory's getting cut. I wouldn't be surprised if like studios like Double Fine, which are still currently owned by Xbox, I don't know what they're working on. They might get the boot. Even Rare, who I know they have Sea of Thieves, and that's still going pretty well for them, and they're putting it on PlayStation just recently. That'll go well. Even Obsidian, these studios, like, if their games, right? What if Avowed only sells like 3 million? Are they going to get the cut next year? Like, no one is safe. No one is safe, especially from these big publishers like an Xbox, like a Sony, who have acquired these different studios. Hell, I don't know if Bungie might be in trouble over there at Sony. Like, I don't know. It's honestly crazy. So, okay, I guess Arcane Austin, some members are joining other studios to work across Bethesda. Some members, though, but a lot of other members are getting the boot. Alpha Dog's completely closing. Tango's completely closing. I hope for the best for all these developers just getting the boot and just not going into other studios. I mean, even the ones who are going to other studios, like they're working on projects they probably don't want to, but the ones who just completely were laid off, like, best of luck. I hope you land on your feet somewhere. Especially, these studios are so talented, and now Bethesda and Xbox own the Hi-Fi Rush IP. They were trying to pitch a sequel, by the way. We're going to get into that. But, like, now those dreams will not be realized. That is freaking absurd. With this consolidation of Bethesda Studios teams that we can invest more deeply in our portfolio of new IP, blah, blah, blah. Bro, You shouldn't have bought Bethesda in the first place if you weren't going to be able to handle this many IP. Like, you're literally buying these studios who were doing their own thing, cutting them down, and reducing your amount of creativity, your amount of output. Xbox needs the output, and they're just completely, I don't know, they're completely reducing it. Changes are not a reflection of the creativity and skill that did it. Yeah. Matt Booty, this is all horseshit. You can't trust anybody at any of these companies. I mean, none of these companies are your friends, mind you, but like you really can't now, especially Phil Spencer, Sarah Bond, Matt Booty. I'm going to assume all lies coming out of their mouths. I know there's been discussions about their perspective versus like other Microsofts, like Satya Nadella, who I think is he the head of Microsoft? Let me know in the comments below. And like conflicting values. And like, sure, I could see that because I mean, we thought that like Phil Spencer was on board with more creative games, but I don't know who's involved with this decision making, but it's not looking good for them. That's all I'm gonna say. It's honestly, it's rough. And then yeah, Tango Gamers. Today was announced that a Tango Gamers. It's bro, it's absolutely fucking ridiculous. Arcane Leon chief hit out the cuts, calling him absolutely terrible. Yes, yes. To any executive reading this, friendly reminder that video games are an entertainment cultural industry, and your business as a corporation is to take care of your artists, entertainers, and to help them create value for you. Exactly. Don't throw us into gold fever gambits. Don't use us as straw men for miscalculations, blind spots. Don't make our work environment Darwinist jungles. You say, this is very well said. You say we can make you proud when you make a good game. Make us proud when times are tough. We know you can do it. We've seen it before. It's honestly crazy. Yeah, it's a gut stab. Seriously. It's like when other studios who are fine, they're probably worried now because they're like, are we next? If I was in a game studio, if I was in a Western game studio, I would be like, are we next on the cutting block? Like, are we safe? I don't know who is anymore. You know, I really don't know. I'm worried for all these studios who are making smaller double A games. You know, like I said, I'm glad Toys for Bob is out there. I'm worried for like Rare. Rare might be. I mean, if Everwild gets canceled, then yeah, I don't know. Like Ninja Theory, I'm worried for. I'm worried for Double Fine. I'm worried for to get out of Xbox for a little bit. I'm worried for the Prince of Persia: Lost Crown team at Ubisoft, right? And the Rayman Origins and Legends team. I'm worried about them. You know, I'm worried about maybe the Mario and Rabbids team. I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen. Lastly, last article I want to shout out. This is going to be over half an hour, and you know what? I don't care. I just need a rant. No one's going to watch this video anyways. Shout out if you are watching this video. Appreciate it. This was an article written today. So Jason Schreier over at Bloomberg, very talented journalist and insider here, had written an original article. Pretty much, I mean, from what I saw, was the first to mention the Xbox cuts, and then IGN had the big article. But this was today. This was a second article mentioning that Xbox is going to have future cuts, which like Xbox is offering voluntary severance agreements to producers, quality assurance, testing other staff at ZeniMax as part of a broader cost-cutting initiative. Oh, is it going to make me what? Is it really going to make me? Hold on. Oh, is this one of the ones you got to pay to read? All right. Well, let me pull it up because I have it on my phone. I don't know why I was able to read the full article there. This was a really good article too, but essentially, this was the one that was talking about how Tango was working on a Hi-Fi Rush sequel, and now that's gone, like completely, which is really, really annoying. Yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to read the full thing here. I have it pulled up on my phone though. This week, Xbox began offering voluntary severance agreements to producers. Yeah, I read that. More cuts are on the way. Employees were shocked by the unexpected shuttering Tuesday of 3 of Xbox subsidiaries. Tango is in the process of pitching a sequel, said the people who asked not to be identified. During a town hall, ZeniMax staff on Wednesday morning, Xbox president Matt Booty praised Hi-Fi Rush, but did not specify why the company had to be shut down and the development studio behind it. Like, oh, this is a great game. All right, well then why are you giving them the fucking boot? Booty said that the company studios had been spread too thin, like peanut butter on bread, and that leaders across the division had felt understaffed. Okay, well in that case, why did Xbox buy them all up? That's the crazy. The whole point of this article, right? I guess Arcane Austin was gonna pitch a single player immersive sim game similar to like maybe a new entry Dishonored. Um, these cuts at Xbox come amid a wider contraction in the video game industry due to economic shifts following a period of rapid growth during the pandemic. Yeah, and there's discussions about just Game Pass not being. While most gaming publishers are looking to take big swings with games that cost hundreds of millions of dollars, Xbox promised to support less sprawling creative titles, such as Hi-Fi Rush with smaller budgets and lower sales expectations. It didn't matter if a game sold tens of millions of copies as long as it helped bolster Game Pass. But Game Pass isn't that good. So, from like Matt Piscatella's reports and everything, Game Pass is not that profitable anymore. Or not that it really didn't reach quite where Phil Spencer wanted it to. Yeah, it has doesn't seem to have paid off. With console revenue down, the company recently began releasing some of its games on competing platforms. It's I know a lot of this focuses on Xbox just because it's been more recent, and yeah, I mean, fuck you, Xbox. We need to hold these people accountable. It's hard for me to want to support companies that are just not going to support this level of creativity. I'm glad Hi-Fi Rush was made. I'm glad a game like Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown was made. But if these studios aren't going to be around forever, where are they going to go? Maybe they'll create their own indie studios, which is kind of what I'll get to the end of this video here. But just like Xbox, Sony, Ubisoft, EA, any of these big, I mean, Epic, any of these big, like, it's mainly Western AAA studios. That's the thing. It really mainly is. They are consolidating so much of the market. Then instead of utilizing that IP, they're cutting costs. I mean, look what happened with Embracer, right? Classic example of why consolidation in this industry is disgusting. Look at what happened with that, where they acquired way too much. They were banking on that like multi-billion-dollar deal that fell through, and then they had to lay off a crap ton of people. Like, it's not sustainable. Not only in terms of nothing about the industry is sustainable, right? Short term, like Aftermath was discussing here, maybe, because then you cut these studios, you get more profit. You don't, I guess these executives don't care about people's jobs. They get more profit, right? And they make their big, massive games like Call of Duty, any FromSoft game. I mean, well, FromSoft is, I don't know. That's been a Namco. That's a little bit of a different story. But it's like, it's not sustainable for anybody in terms of profits, in terms of creativity. It's definitely not sustainable. People are just going to start caring less and less. You're going to be eating the same games over and over again. You're going to be playing the same exact ones. Where's the variety? Where's the creativity? I guess the variety will be in, oh, we're going to get the next God of War game in 15 years after this one was made. Maybe that's the creativity. It's, oh, it's been so long since we've seen this. We're going to get fewer and fewer games that are going to be less distinct if the industry keeps this pattern up. Now, I say the industry, I mainly mean the AAA Western industry. Nintendo is not exempt from this for sure, but because they are mainly a Japanese company. So is Sony, but they're so focused on Western development that the same stuff applies to them, right? But with Nintendo, it's like because they have the laws in place, this happens a lot less with them. And I'm gonna be completely honest with all of you, and this isn't just because I'm the biggest fan of Nintendo, but just looking at everything as a whole, I don't know if you can argue against the fact that they have the most general creative process out of any of the big three publishers, the big three console manufacturers. I don't think you can argue that. Like, sure, they're doing a lot of remakes lately, but now we've had it confirmed that that's well, they didn't confirm it, but now that we know the Switch successor is coming in the near future, that means their big studios are working on new games for the next system, and that's why they need to fill in their release calendar with remakes and smaller titles. But they still have such a creative process that has worked for decades, right? And they are a big corporation. I'm not going to cut them fully on some slack on this because like there have been cases where they just make very iterative games. I mean, certain series you can argue are like that, right? But feel like for the most part, it's hard to kind of dunk on them for that. You know what I mean? They keep things interesting. And then these other studios are just, I mean, of course, Nintendo's focused on profits, right? Because they're a giant company. They're what, the highest valued corporation in Japan now? But they seem to care more about making creative games. It's really hard to tell because I'm sure the individual development studios at Xbox, at Sony, at these big publishers, I'm sure they really care about the games they're making. I mean, hell, you could see with Hi-Fi Rush, you could see in some of the developer directs Xbox has, which I don't even know if those are real or not anymore. But like you can tell the studios themselves are passionate about the games they make. But then you have the executives who literally do not give a shit. If your game doesn't turn around absolute banger of a profit, you're gone. They don't care. You're out of there. It's like you can't and it's tough because, like, especially a company like Microsoft, they try to make you wanna root for them. They're like, "Oh, like, we support emulation. Oh, Game Pass is for the gamer. It's convenient." And then they pull shit like this where you can't believe them. You literally can't believe you can't believe any of these massive companies. You really can't. Which is why, and to wrap up this video, I know I've been going on for half an hour, but this is a rant video. Support indie games. If you want creativity in today's day and age, you gotta go indie. That's the way to do it. We can't trust these big development houses, these big publishers to make creative games anymore. We can't. Now, if all you want to do is play Call of Duty or GTA or certain games like that, or live service games like Fortnite, more power to you. You keep doing that. But if you're someone like me who likes unique, smaller experiences, you're not going to get these with these big publishers. The one exception I can think of is Nintendo. And then occasionally you'll get something like a Hi-Fi Rush, like a Prince of Persia: and The Lost Crown. But I think we used to see a lot more of those even like a decade ago, and certainly before that. But it seems like we're getting that less and less with these giant AAA Western publishers and like studios. I don't know. It's if you want creativity, go indie. That's what I'm starting to lean more towards. And I just like, for example, like I brought up the Indiana Jones point. I was on the fence about it before. I was honestly considering it. After all this, I'm like, do I really care? Would I rather play something like Indiana Jones, which is a first person? Well, I guess also third person action adventure game. Looks fine. Or how about like a unique indie game, right? Hades 2, right? Just went into early access. Apparently that game's phenomenal. And I'm definitely getting some FOMO from it, but I want to wait for the full release and then I might jump on it, hopefully like next year. It's indie games are doing so much more creative stuff. Like that's where the innovation's coming into play. All these indie studios who don't have the massive shackles of these giant corporations. In some cases they do. I mean, look at Roll 7. They were bought up by Take Two, I think. They must have been acquired by Take Two at some point because then the Take Two shut them down. Look at Roller Drome, very unique game. Ollie World, those games are unique too. Unfortunately, there was a massive publisher like Take Two involved, and they got screwed over. Right? I don't see how. This is very personal to me because I double majored in both computer science and game development when I went to college. I almost ended up in the gaming industry. And to this day, I say I'm glad I did not. And this is exactly why. If I were to enter the games industry, I would probably try to make my own indie studio, which would also be ridiculously tough, but it would beat this shit. It would so beat this shit. I want the games industry to change. I want this to change because this is disgusting. I care about this industry, but stuff like this it's gross. It's honestly, how can you look at this and say the industry's in a good spot? And then the issue is, don't even get me started. The issue is you have people. I'm gonna name drop Jeff Keighley out here with Summer Games Fest, with the Game Awards, who glamorizes these big AAA studios in this industry. Absolutely glamorizes them. Doesn't even mention the layoffs, right, at the Game Awards that are happening. And it's like we're celebrating, oh, look at these. Oh, what's Kojima's next game? It's like I guess Kojima's fine because he's on his own. But you know what? I don't know. I don't know, man. It's this side of the industry, which I mean, it's hard to avoid, is really becoming so capitalized. It's ridiculous, and it's honestly it kind of makes my stomach churn. I don't know about you. Maybe you guys don't care. More power to you if you don't care, but it's really getting to me to the point where I just like I don't give a shit about what Xbox does. Well, unless it affects other people like this. I don't care anymore. Like, I mean, I sailed off the Sony boat long ago. I never invested in Sony, but Xbox, like, I like their hardware, but I'm not gonna get any future hardware. I don't think because if they're not gonna make any interesting games, then why would I invest in that? Call me up when Banjo happens, though. That's the one exception I can think of now. Because otherwise, what do they have? I guess they have Crash and Spyro under them, but I don't know what they're gonna do there. I don't know. Support indie games. Indie games are really fostering the innovation in today's industry. Nintendo is too. Nintendo's doing the best job out of the big three publishers of creating it. Like I try to argue that with me in the comments below. In terms of fostering creativity and innovation, Nintendo has the other two beat by a land mile. You know, I don't even know. I'm not even speaking English at this point because I don't know, man. It's honestly crazy. It's honestly crazy the state that this industry's in, and it didn't help that the Nintendo Switch successor tweet came out the exact same day as the Xbox Studio closures were announced. Like, because this got overshadowed by the Switch successor stuff. Of course it did, because it's been talked about for years. And I wish more people talked about it. I mean, I really appreciate people like Nathan Grayson at Aftermath, the writers over at IGN, Kotaku. I saw one of them, Jason Schreier over at Bloomberg for sure. Like, I really appreciate all of these journalists for covering this stuff because the more they write about it and the more it gets out in the public, the more these big corporations will pay attention. And I think it has to backfire on these big corporations, right? I would hope, but if we keep feeding into this cycle of glamorizing the games industry like this, of, you know, only buying your Call of Duties and you're supporting your live service games, it's like they're not going to stop because it's going to make money. So, voting with your wallet while individually does not make a big impact, I mean, you can choose to do that on your own, right? You can choose not to get the next big AAA game if you don't like the output that the studio's having, right? You're not obligated to buy anything. You can do whatever you want. I would say, isn't it wild that indie games are so much cheaper than AAA games? I feel like indie games should be more expensive. I honestly, they deserve the money more. It's like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I I'm definitely really getting into a lot more indie games this year, which I'm a big fan of, and I'm gonna keep doing that. I think most of the releases I'm gonna buy that are new, I think are gonna be indie games going forward, except with the exception of Nintendo and like some, third party Japanese studios like Sega, Capcom. I mean, they're doing okay. They're still doing creative stuff, somewhat, right? But like, I don't know. It's really hard to be excited about the future of the games industry when you have these corporate pigs ruining the whole thing. Creativity is not anywhere in their priorities, and they're just focused on pushing a profit. That's the only focus. I don't know. It's This video is long enough. It's almost 40 minutes long. I know this was just me ranting the whole time. If you made it through this whole thing, like, thank you. Appreciate it. I want to know your thoughts. Be kind in the comments. If I see any disrespectful comments, I mean, you're just literally going to get removed and blocked from the channel because I don't support bigots in the comments there. So definitely just be respectful. But let me know your thoughts. Are you a fan of the games that these studios are putting? Like, that's totally fine. And from what I'm seeing, it's the same old crap coming out with minor exceptions, and it's only going to get worse from here. It's hard to be optimistic. I know this is a very negative video. It's hard to be optimistic of this side of the game studio. Support indies. Indies are doing some great stuff. That's all I'm going to say. If you want a very specific type of game, chances are there's an indie studio who has made it or who is working on it. Guaranteed, because there's so many of them out there. There's an endless sea of indie games. They're generally cheaper than these giant AAA games, and they're so much more creative. And any studio's usually going to be passionate behind their game, but especially indie studios, like, you're getting a good experience out of that. So, I don't know. With that, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. We'll see how this shapes up, but it's not looking good. We'll see. Anyways, take care. Have a good one. Practice self care. Don't get too bogged down by this. It's just video games at the end of the day, but do what you want. See ya.